I wanted to kind of explore this idea, and um, yeah, we'll see where it goes. Um, so something I've been kind of kicking around my own thoughts and just kind of sitting with is like, um, why do we meditate? Like why mindfulness? Why therapy? Why do any of it? Yeah, it's kind of this existential question around my own existence, my own. I like these questions. It's not a negative thing. I think it can be sometimes if we do that, but I think for this it's more of a curiosity right now. Why do it for myself? Why do others? And I think what um, uh, what I hope that this provides is a way um, to de-stress, a way to understand our psychology, a way to demystify our thoughts, emotions, like the stuff that we're not used to. Not that we're not used to interacting with them, but that nobody teaches us how to interact with them. Um, I think I've shared this before, but I'll share it again. Have I ever talked about the first time I was asked to, like, I was taking a mindfulness and acceptance class? So it was like it's called a practicum, which is like you see one client and you use this modality with that client. So I was doing, mindfulness, but they don't watch you or anything. You're just kind of reporting back. Anyways, one of the things we needed to do was to describe what mindfulness was. And the way I described it probably gave a very good impression to the professor about where I was with my emotions. So I'll share it with you and kind of describe this and just see, maybe it relates to some, maybe not to others. The way I described it was like, I was like, it's as if there's this dam, and underneath the dam is this valley, and the valley is barren, and there's nothing there except kind of, sticks and twigs and so forth. And this dam that's holding all the water has all these holes. And, what we do before we learn mindfulness is we're trying to plug all the holes constantly, and we're so focused on this, and we're just, okay, this is, I'm in the desert. Like, this is what I have. And mindfulness is kind of like taking that dam out and letting that water rush so that all that barren desert can become lush again, can become vibrant. Yeah. I love the metaphor. It's like, okay, so you kind of like flow again. What I was also describing indirectly was how fearful I was of emotions and thoughts. Yeah. How scary they were. And because I related it to this giant dam holding all this water and restricting life, it's because that's how they felt. These thoughts I'd have, these beliefs about myself, these emotions felt like they were restricting me. Not helping, but restricting. Yeah. Um, the professor hated it, by the way. She thought that was awful, and nobody would ever want to do mindfulness with me. So I had to rethink how I addressed it. The reason I share it is because all of you have been practicing it, but I think it also goes to why I'm so passionate about it. Because I think for me, and again, I can only talk for me because I could talk about the research, but I don't think that's very helpful right this moment. But for me, it's this thing where it demystifies that. I now know how I deal with thoughts. I now know how I deal with emotions. Not that I am an expert. I mean, I can only be, you know, as much of an expert as the next person with those things. But I hope my awareness has gotten bigger around things that before maybe caused that wall to feel so large. That I can't even overcome these things, this desert so barren, which I guess as I reflect on analyzing myself back then, like that's the suffering I was experiencing, right? All the things that were being restricted by not having flow inside. Yeah. Feeling like I got to stop things, avoid things, not have it. Because that was the focus. How do I not have this thing? Like, I know I've shared like starting in college is when I really didn't want to do public speaking. And so I remember there was no way to avoid it. If I wanted this degree, I had to get through a class, and that's all we had to do is public speaking, and I was like, I don't want to do this. It was a communications class, which I thought was like going to be a fun class, and it turned out to be torture at that moment. So I remember, like, we had a bar on campus. Go take some shots of vodka. Just try not to feel it. Maybe more anxious, I'll be honest. It did not help. And I was fumbling and stumbling probably more. But it was the only thing I could try to do to try to escape that impending kind of wall that I was feeling, or that barren desert. So I offer this as more of a reflection of like, okay, yeah, so that's where I started with it. Yeah. Trying to escape, avoid, and maybe even use mindfulness as a way to escape or avoid, to be somewhere else that it's not here. I think why I became so passionate about it is it finally gave me what really felt like is an anchor to this moment, to life, to being present, to being fully alive, and hope. And and then of course using it clinically with other people and seeing it just changing for others just reinforced the whole thing. I like it. I'm getting something out of this. I feel like others are getting out of it. So this makes a lot of sense. But what I've also noticed for myself over the years, and I think others, is when we start to hurt, we forget about that. It's like, oh yeah, there's mindfulness, but whatever. Like, yeah, that's, but I need, something different or new, or, whatever that might be. But it always comes back to the same thing, at least I've noticed, which is in any way, shape, or form, even if it's my own therapy and having to talk through whatever it is, it's because I'm having a problem not, with being present in some way, or I want to escape or avoid it. It's the same stuff. Yeah? And I'm not saying therapy is the same as meditation, but kind of am. There's a lot of overlap. Maybe a lot of overlap in how I see therapy. It doesn't also mean that we can simply meditate things away, because that's not what we do, right? It's more about meditating with something to maybe gain awareness about it and how we're reacting to it and how we're navigating it and how we're really interacting with whatever that thing is. For example, let's say I'm having a sudden bout where I'm just angry all the time or irritable. Yeah. Can I meditate with it and start to learn, what is it that's causing this? Yeah. Just be curious, open to it. That's where expansion of our awareness grows. And I feel like that's where we grow. Yeah. But there's also this interesting thing that occurs along that path that I've noticed, again, in myself, but also when I started teaching mindful self-compassion, actually taking the course myself, became even more, I guess, seeing it in writing made it more, I guess, real, which is kind of this process of like, and I think, it's easy to get in this process, which is like striving, so we get in this process of like, and these are actually the stages. If you look at the book, it literally says stages of progress. Like, these are literal, like, this is how you progress with something. But when we're in it, it's hard to see. Yeah. It's actually why I like teaching about mindfulness, is because it allows me to constantly remind myself, because without that reminder, I forget, just like anybody. Yeah. So I guess part of this is also just the common humanity around remembering the stuff in times of difficulty. It's hard. It is. It's not an easy process, and it's going to wax and wane. But the stage is really of being like, this like striving to be someone other than ourselves, like we don't want to accept that we are irritable or angry or whatever. So we're going to do something to try to get rid of it. Yeah. What happens when you do that with meditation? Maybe at first you can feel a little calm with it, but ultimately those things that are irritating you, you're not going to just suddenly not feel, right? Because actually what meditation is going to help you do is actually kind of allow almost the difference between, they say like, how do you cook a frog? It's kind of a mean example, but you start slowly in cool water, and then you slowly work your way up to hot water because it's more tolerable. Well, emotionally we need kind of the same thing. So maybe, as we're meditating and we feel present with something, we're actually creating this space where, hey, I can make it more tolerable, and then slowly kind of open myself up to it in a way that it's not going to feel too overwhelming. Yeah. But then, what happens is we start to go, wait a second, but if that's the case, then I'm not changing myself. I'm stuck with this again, right? And we go, what? And we start to, and this stage is actually called disillusionment, but this idea of like, the point is we start to go, wait, the point you're saying is, or with ourselves, is like, it's not to actually change who I am, it's actually to accept myself. What? No, that can't be it. That's ridiculous. Yeah. And maybe like this stuff can't work, and we start to get frustrated with it. Or when it's not working, let's say we have whatever we're struggling with, or the many things we might struggle with, kind of is heightened for a period of time. We go, oh, well, that shit doesn't work, and we just kind of throw it away, right? I mean, this is human nature. Yeah. And you might experience different ways of this, but I'm just giving you examples I've noticed. But we all have different ways of kind of entering these stages. And then with the last stage of being this radical acceptance of actually, you're telling me to accept myself, and I think I agree with that. I don't know how. I don't know, and maybe we don't know, but at least, there's some radical acceptance, and I get that. I want that too, but that's far off. And then we might even experience moments where we feel like we accept ourselves, and those moments, however fleeting, the idea is that over time, those start to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. So it's not a linear process. It can, you can kind of see it as a bit of a stitching together of, I guess, I don't know, come up with a metaphor of the fabric of your kind of life. It's like there will be times where we're feeling really disillusioned by it, where it's like, I don't buy into any of that shit. I can't stand it. Like, whatever it is, I don't agree. Okay, fine. Or it's not going to work for me, or yeah, that works for others, not for me. Whatever that might be for you, however that kind of comes out. Then we have times where we're striving again, back to that, the more Buddhist concept would be like grasping, yeah, but we call it striving, same idea. Kind of striving to be someone other than we are, and that might happen, And sometimes, that phase is actually, we can call it like a subtle form of, what do they call it? Like, of like a subtle form of almost like, harming ourselves in a way, like we want to be other than we are, right? Like, what is here is not good enough, I need to be here, yeah? So we almost like criticize and all that. And then again, experiencing that radical acceptance piece. And they can happen in any order and at any time. So the next piece is like, so there's these different phases and stages and different ways we all enter this and kind of have our doors, and meaning, one person might really connect with it with yoga, another person through more of an internal meditation, another person through a sense and savor walk. All of those are great. They're great. We put certain priorities and preferences maybe based on classes we're attending, or, well, Brandon does mainly, sitting meditations. Well, that must be the best. No, it's not. It's just my way in. That's my preferred way in. Doesn't mean it's your preferred way in. And that's good. We don't need to have the same. Yeah? It's also just as fine if it was the same. So the other piece is, sometimes that disillusionment can be sneaky. It can be sneaky because it's like, it's very, like when I do any type of group, the sentiment I hear the most a lot of times is like, well, when I'm feeling really shitty, I don't want to come to group. And it's like, I want it to be the opposite, but I can't convince you otherwise. But I would like it to be the opposite for you. Because honestly, in my experience, and maybe it's just, again, my perspective of doing this so much and seeing it so much, is like, that's usually the time it's the most helpful. It's the times that you're feeling like, fuck this, I just want to sit here and do nothing and don't want, or I don't want to think about that, or whatever it is, oftentimes are the most helpful times. It's almost like in that disillusionment phase, we need a little bit of opposite action, which is kind of like, it's telling me not to go to group. So it kind of means I need to go to group. I don't know. Somebody was telling me earlier, they're like, sometimes when things are true, they're painful. And I was like, yeah, you're right, actually. Yeah, that does make, like, especially if there's a truth about you, think about that. Like, if there's something that's hurting us, like, it feels hurtful, not hurting us literally, but like we're feeling an emotional ugh or whatever it is. Sometimes it's because it's something we actually need more of, or it's bringing something up that we're uncomfortable with, but doesn't mean to be something that we move away from. So throughout all of this, it's kind of like the theme today that I want to really focus on is the anchor. I mean, that's really what I'm talking about, is we can also get caught up in all these existential themes, or this thinking about thinking, or ruminating about something that we're using to help us maybe not ruminate, or whatever it might be that's happening. It all comes back to maintaining that anchor. Yeah, because from there you can do, I don't know, I feel like things are a lot more limitless, And so from that perspective too, it's like if I go back to thinking about that initial metaphor, I'm like, well, it's not really a wall, yeah? Because we don't completely wall off to emotion. It's not like there's nothing there, yeah? So what would that wall be for you? Think about like that, what does mindfulness help to maybe let go of? So for me, it probably represented, instead of a wall, I could put a boat there that says a cop of control. It's like this control boat that's like, no, you got to control, because that's really what it was, like this police officer in my system trying to make everything work and control it and make a certain thing happen, and that wasn't working. Yeah, and it wasn't that there was no water and there was this dry desert. There was plenty of water. Maybe though it wasn't flowing in the directions that I was choosing or wanting, because I was more reactive versus choosing into something. Yeah. So why bring this full circle and kind of talk about the beginning again is just to get at this idea of, like, one, sometimes we forget, like, think about before you started practicing any sort of mindfulness, meditation, therapy, anything, just how that was, Maybe some of you feel the same way as I do. Like, whoa, I was like really trying to control everything. And this has been one of those vehicles to be like, hey, Mr. Police Officer, you can go take a break right now. Like meditation's kind of like, chill, man. It's like, let's take some breaths. And maybe it helps that part of you. Maybe it helps a different type of kind of internal part, meaning maybe there was a disruptor in there that wanted to go around and just fuck with everything. Or maybe it was a critic that just went around and, just picking at everybody and trying to beat people up. Maybe it was a bully, whatever way you were feeling about maybe those parts of you. Reflecting on, like, okay, so that's where it started. And then just notice, like, what have been. And so it's maybe using it as a reflection of, like, what is it like now? Is it still that way? Has it changed? And sometimes there's bits and pieces of that. Like, I feel like that cop of control for me went from this almost titanic vessel within this tiny little area, so basically blocking everything, to a very small, maybe rowboat that has not really a lot of power or steam. That sometimes gets pretty upset with things, but for the most part, pretty chill. Yeah. Or if he gets activated, it just doesn't have necessarily the power to catch life and stop those things from flowing. So I guess two parts is really, it's not just about coming back to an anchor, but also, I guess, reflection, using some time to, like, what has this allowed to shift for you internally? I think oftentimes we have gratitude for all sorts of things, but having gratitude sometimes for our internal awareness, our all the work we've put in. I mean, for many of us, I'd say for everybody here, it's a lot of work, and like that's awesome. Not all people do that. I think most here, including myself, there's a wish that others in our families would do the same, and that doesn't necessarily follow. Yeah. And how cool is it that we've chosen that? You know, how cool is it that we've taken that path? We may not always take it because sometimes we're disillusioned. Sometimes we're stuck in the illusion that we need to be different. Yeah. It's an illusion. But I get stuck just like everybody else. I think the only thing that helps me is, or that I could say, is that all that work helps me get unstuck quick. Yeah. Noticing it and be able to unstick continuously. Yeah. So much so that that little police officer feels little now. It's not this giant freaking thing that feels like it's about to collapse. It's like, oh, it's that big. Yeah. So reflection, hopefully, and again, intent and impact are two different things. So sometimes my intention with it is different than how it lands, which is totally fine. Is towards gratitude for how keeping at something like this and is hard, and it's not going to be a straight shot. Yeah, and the humanness of, like, one, it's hard. Two, we all have our own process with it, and like, most importantly, if it's been helpful, how do we have, gratitude for this thing that's been helpful, whatever that thing or person or idea or insight or whatever that is, whatever they are or it is. Yeah. So thank you for allowing me to do a little bit of free association, because I hadn't fully had a full kind of idea of how I was going to present these ideas. They were kind of these swirly things, and I was like, You
will receive our bill.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Yes. At the risk of glomming onto your metaphor.
I think spillways is a good start. Yeah. Meaning, if, over time, maybe helping those dams to lower even to where there isn't a need to cut it off. Yeah. But sometimes we need, that's too much, right? But yeah, thank you. So let's do a meditation with this, and then we'll have some time to chat with that. So in the spirit of this, let's pick a posture you want to start with. It could be something that represents your favorite meditation, if that's the body scan or your first meditation, and letting yourself lie down. If it's sitting, choosing that. Whatever that might be for you. If it's movement, maybe honoring movement in this moment. And taking a few deep, maybe cleansing breaths in and out. Maybe even on your exhale, letting go of any thoughts that may be stirred up right now, or conversations you might be having with yourself or with me. Letting that just be in the ether. And beginning by connecting with your anchor. For many of us, this will be the breath. So if that's the case for you, then connecting with the breath. If that doesn't feel accessible today, honoring this for yourself, maybe picking sound, movement, sensation other than the breath in the body, or something else, an external object perhaps. yourself to be here, nowhere else. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do right now. Letting yourself arrive here. Maybe if it doesn't feel too activating, if it feels okay to do, maybe just kind of peering in for a moment, as if kind of on a TV screen or just kind of in third person. Maybe just kind of playing the average day of yourself before learning about this practice, before the anchor. See if you could do so with compassionate eyes, for this being who's struggling and didn't have the tools, the resources that maybe they needed. Knowing that it wasn't their fault for not having it. Nobody teaches this. And notice it just enough to just notice, okay, this kind of represents the autopilot that was being felt back then. When stress would arise, maybe even just, it doesn't have to be specific stress, it can be when in traffic, when working or at school. When there were any issues maybe interpersonally. Again, just noticing just enough, not to kind of stick back there, but just to get a sense, like, yeah, that's right. I did that. Again, this isn't saying anything about you, except you're human. You may have reacted in ways, responded in ways that you wouldn't now, and see if rather than kind of reacting to that, you can acknowledge it. Yeah, that was then. And parts of that, pieces might come up, but yeah, today, that may not be the same. And so kind of imagine that, almost as if, if you want to imagine kind of holding out one hand and placing that kind of younger you, whether that's 6 months ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, whenever that might be, in one hand. If you'd like, you can even kind of hold the hands a bit like up and just comfortable and imagine it there. And then in the other hand, you now. How do you now? What's it like when traffic is there? What are your days like when you're not in autopilot? How do you deal with work, interpersonal stress, classes, whatever that might be for you? Maybe just acknowledging the efforts this part has made, the growth that may be there, and it's okay to also notice areas that we would like to open up more to, places maybe that feel stuck. just remember, this is what it's like to be human. And more so, this is what it's like to be a human who values self-care in some way, whatever that means for you. Because if you're here, value it. Maybe it's called something different: awareness building, insight. And in it, there's something that matters to you. Now, you just kind of imagine a bridge a little bit. Bridge of the past to the future. Bridge that goes from the left hand over to the right, or right to the left, whichever one represents the past, and to the future. And just kind of plug along that bridge the effort, the dedication, the practice to the self-care. Again, you might call it something different. Just feel free to replace whatever words you want to put in there. For many of us, this may have started with MBSR. Very first day, with not knowing anybody, putting a raisin into our mouth, calling it an object, learning about beginner's mind. Doing some, what we may have felt back then were odd or strange or different or just completely new. For others, this might have been through reading or podcasts, a certain app that introduced you to these concepts. And again, on this bridge, just kind of laying down maybe different parts of this experience that required practice. Part of this is this class. The many classes you've taken in this area. Oftentimes it's easy to recognize the formal practice, the things we could say we completed. So I want you to almost inhale that feeling of, look at all this, this dedication. As you exhale, I want you to imagine breathing into that, and as you do, imagine all that air that surrounds it. That's all the informal practice, and let that be there too. And you can keep breathing into that. Maybe even breathing in all the time and dedication. As you exhale, the acknowledgement of all that informal stuff, the ways in which it was used in seconds and moments. Coming back to something each time, whether it be regulating a strong emotion, trying to understand something about ourselves or others, maybe at times being confused, bewildered, lost. All of this matters. All of this is the practice. If what comes up is gratitude, let yourself feel it. Be with it. Honor it. If what comes up is any form of criticism or contempt or any of that, listen to it without buying into it. Perhaps there are things I could do more of. Acknowledging this is what it's like to be human. I don't always choose the path. Look at all this teaching, this dedication. If it'd be helpful to put a supportive hand somewhere on your body, offer that to yourself. If that feels like it would detract or take something away, then let that be. Before we kind of let go of this image, these ideas, they stay with us. They impact others. They flow throughout our existence. But ask yourself, has this been a changing myself kind of thing? Has it been a trying to be somebody other than I'm not? Is that really what helped create all those steps in that bridge that filled the air with practice? Or has it been a journey? Of connecting more and more with you, with this one right here. Wherever you're at in this moment, whether it's feeling connected to this specific practice or off somewhere else, or maybe in a different state of mind in this moment, remembering the one common thing here, always coming back to your anchor. And honestly, always coming back to this being right here. Allowing this being to show up more fully, authentically, more free. When you're ready, slowly and gently, at your time, ending this practice by honoring it in any way that you choose to in this moment. When you're ready, turning attention back to our group.